Welcome to the Sharpest College Football Podcast. We are going to today talk about what or who is an excellent coach in the football season 25-25. I am BuckMetrics, joined as always by Robert Martin. Robert, in some of our discussions on Twitter, sometimes we have these discussions about, well, this guy's going to blow it, that guy's going to blow it. I can't imagine this guy's not going to screw up at some point. And but these discussions, I kind of wonder, who are we not going to say this about? It appeared to me that we were holding everybody to a standard that might be a little bit too high. So I wanted to just, with one of my favorite people, personally and college football wise and intelligence wise, just explore this topic a little bit. So I wanted to just talk about in today's 2025 season, what is or who is an excellent coach?
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for the kind words. Yeah, and I think no, it is actually an important question, right? Because again, it's a theme here is that when you see quarterbacks, right? Like you think Cam Ward, like Archie Manning, like Kyler Murray, like all these guys, Jalen Daniels. You think of when you're saying like, oh, they're good. It's is that the standard? Do they need to be like that good?
Mhm.
Or is it just like, well, how good is good? Right? What's an acceptable level of good is kind of, and it's an important question to think about, right? Because it's like we always attribute, oh, this is good, right? We say Tom Brady is good at football, right? But that's the thing, it's okay, he's like possibly one of the best and most accomplished ever quarterbacks. What else is good? Clearly that's not the level of good. Clearly a level below Tom Brady is still good, right? So the question is, where do you draw that line?
That is a great place to start here because, as I go over here, I think there's a good analog to Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes and to what I've seen in the college football world I don't know, Tom Brady came on the scene in 2000. So he wasn't Tom Brady until later, but I've got a theory here that we had just an unprecedented run of three all-time great college head coaches. From 2002, that was the first year that USC they won a share of the Pac-10, and they had seven straight. They had two national championships. So started from 2002 to 2024, Nick Saban's last season. I think that you just had this crazy concentration of three awesome head coaches that just we haven't seen before at the same time. That really skewed, I think, what an idea is outside of this run about what is a good head coach. I put together a graphic just to illustrate this. We have, again, the least accomplished of these three is one Peter Carroll, as I get my laser pointer here, who all he did was win seven straight conference titles, two national titles in a span of 9 seasons. So really dominant for these seven from 2002 to 2008. Meanwhile, you had Urban Meyer, who was tearing it up at Bowling Green, and then I have the star here when he was at Utah. That wasn't peak Urban Meyer, but that was the season that they went undefeated and they crushed Pitt in the Fiesta Bowl, I think it was. And that was the same season that actually USC went undefeated as well. So you've got some signs already here. So Urban goes to Florida in 2006, wins the national title in 2000 or 2005, but wins a national title in 2006 and another one in 2008, I believe. Takes a year off, suspiciously buys a house in Columbus just by coincidence. He did grow up in Ohio. As luck would have it, gee whiz, he goes to Ohio State, just has another crazy run where he wins another national championship here. Undefeated against Michigan. I think maybe in this span, I think maybe he lost a total of 10 or 11 games. Does that sound right?
Something like that. Yeah, like on every season, like 11-1, stuff like that level.
So this would be a good rivalry, just these two with some overlap here. And then you have the greatest coach of all time here, who,
Yeah.
just for fun, wins a national title in 2003 at LSU. It was clear when he was at Michigan State before that he was a good coach. Had whatever here towards the end at LSU, went to screw around with the Dolphins for a second. But then just this is his title here, his span here at Alabama is the greatest that we've ever seen of any coach. It's not even close. Just absolute dominance that really just put these guys, like I said, in the back seat in terms of just recent historical context, which is crazy. And I think just just this having just one of these guys sequentially, maybe just with one more, kind of makes it more normal-ish. But it seemed like these three guys in succession just they broke the curve. If it would, if I think in just what current coaches are today, you think that's a fair assessment?
No, yeah, there's no coach with like maybe asterisk somewhat like half of Dabo maybe, but there's no one
Yeah.
who has this kind of this unprecedented dominance, right? Like I think the mark from like a good coach to a great coach is that like even in down years they're still there, right?
Yep.
Like even in down years for Alabama, sometimes they just win an act. Like they'd be like, "Oh, hey, like remember back in 2020 when Alabama had Bryce Young and what's the name, the good wide receiver and Najee
Devon-
Harris, Devontae Smith, just that insane team, and it's just like they're gonna win, no question. They're gonna just steamroll everyone, and it's not even a question. But like even you, then you go back a year to the Joe Burrow LSU team, and Alabama was still competitive with them. And it's just like with a coach like that, it doesn't like if they have the best team, it's just theirs. They win no matter. There's no question. But even if they don't have the best team, it's still like 50-50 whether or not they win that or not. Like they're still at least very competitive with that best team. And I think that's the line between good coach and like best of all time. Same as Urban Meyer, right? Yeah, okay, he won the championship with Florida the one year. And the next year, yeah, he was right back there with Florida in the SEC championship game, very competitive there. That was the Tim Tebow game where at the end of the game, because they lost and got crushed, it was the crying game, the Tim Tebow crying game. But this is the thing, right? It's
The
with
Tim
the
Tebow Crying Game. Are you familiar with the movie The Crying Game? Because that has a little different connotation for people my age.
no, I don't. I'm not familiar with that movie. No,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
this is the
Don't
thing.
look it up.
Okay, I will not look that up. But no, this is the thing, right? There's this line where some of these guys, you just airdrop them on any team. It doesn't matter. They're going to make them a competitive team. They will make that team be as competitive as it can be. And I think that's kind of the line. And the thing is, it's questionable as to whether or not. Actually, it's probably not questionable because again, it doesn't seem to matter. Like Nick Saban was always just really good. But the thing is, with the coaches now, like obviously the kind of parity we have now, we have Ryan Day, Dan Lanning, with Kevin DeBoer, right? We have all of these ones, and the question is Nick Saban just better than all of them? Is
Oh my
literally just
God,
better
yeah.
than all of them. But the thing is, okay, but then why can't we just make another Nick Saban? Is it the fact that we're just now better at coaching? Like everybody's just at a higher level now than before? Is that what it is, or is it just like we just gotten better at being coaches, and that's why we have more at a kind of a higher we have more at a higher level rather than one just at an elite level and everybody else much lower.
I think my theory is there's just a vacuum and we don't even know because I think there just needs to be a reset. I don't think there'll be another Saban, but I think somebody that's of this level right here. Oops, there it is. Saban and Carroll. Those don't come along too often, and we might get one, like we talked about in our prior episode, with top end player movement probably slowing around at top levels. I think it'll probably be easier or harder. It'll be easier to retain, but at the same time, your rivals will be easier for them to retain their top talent too. So the gauntlet could be harder now that I'm thinking about it at those top levels. In 2 or 3 years when these things settle down and you get NIL more settled and stability at the top end, and then you get like a team like USC who's recruiting a lot better, those guys in the program, and they're able to keep them a lot more. It's going to be really difficult to go undefeated in the Big Ten, supposedly the lesser of the two conferences. Forget about the SEC. To your point about, well, let's just make another Saban. I wanted to do some perspective here on basically those three and basically three of the all-time best. I picked probably, I don't know who else we'd want to include post World War II. I'm going back a ways
No,
here,
I mean
right? I mean,
that's the line you kind of have to draw there, right? Where some of those conferences didn't
yeah,
even exist pre World War II, right? So
yeah. So you have Bear Bryant, Nick Saban had the same number of national titles. It took Saban just over half as long to get there. Urban Meyer had 3 national titles in just 13 seasons. If you compare that to guys like Paterno and Bobby Bowden, they each had 2. Yeah, a quarter. Pete Carroll got 2 really quick. Ask some of my friends here who are also alums of the school. They say he easily screwed up and should have had at least 1 more in that time period too. And that's 2 in 9 seasons compared to 2 in 46 or 40. Maybe here's one question right here. If you had peak Joe Paterno and peak Bobby Bowden coaching today, would people be like talking about them? Oh, they're going to screw this up, or I don't think they're that good. There's no way they can go through the season with just one loss. I don't. I think that they probably would be catching the same flack as these other guys who are catching flack today, even
Yeah,
though they're among the best. Is that fair?
I 100% believe that. The thing is, it's even the apples to apples comparison isn't even fair because the game is completely different than Joe Paterno is dead. So like he wouldn't even recognize today's game, right? That's the point, right? Like it's you like in a lot of ways the game has now today completely evolved and to counter all the strategies that were used back then. So you can't just airdrop Joe Paterno onto a team right now and be like, all right, how many wins would he have? You can't even do that, right? This is the thing where it's I think like those guys would be like a Dan Lanning or a James Franklin level where it's now the thing is that they're always a lot of those guys did have questionable calls. There's a lot of times Joe Paterno would get flack for a call here. These guys were not perfect. Again,
Yeah.
two national championships in 46 seasons. Like, what would Dan Lanning? How many national championships would Dan Lanning have in 46 seasons? How many would James Franklin? You give him 46 seasons, he's at least going to get one. At one season, he'll just be better than literally his team will be better than literally every other team, and he'll get one. Right? That's the
I'm
thing.
I'm trying to imagine Dan Lanning. He's just way too energetic. 46 seasons, he's not going to make it.
Yeah.
He's got to burn out after. Yeah, it's a different. The other thing too that about it being a different game is back when these guys coached for most of their time, the scholarship limits were like 120 or 100 and down to 95, and now it's at 85. So it's in theory it's a lot harder to be dominant, which I think
Mm-hmm.
speaks even more about what exactly Saban has accomplished here.
And I think one of the reasons why Saban did retire is the transfer portal. And he'll say he'll take out the tiny little violin and be like, "Oh, the players." And but the thing is, it's like the game is now like when he was there. And if you go back and you rewatch some of those classic Alabama games, it's oh look, he has four first round draft picks. Oh, the running back is a first round draft pick, and the quarterback is a third round quarterback, and he's got oh look, that's a first round wide receiver, and oh that guy won defensive player of the year 2 years from now in the NFL. These teams are insanely stacked. But then the best part is you look at the bench and you're like, oh look, that guy was a first round pick, and he's just sitting on the bench right now. That's the
Yeah,
level of these teams, and you got that because of the way recruitment worked. Because they would recruit these top guys, they'd sit on them for a year or two, and then they play them and then they develop them and then they go to the NFL. But like nowadays, actually, I'll use an example, a modern day example of this, kind of like Malik Murphy, right? He was a highly recruited quarterback to Texas. Then I guess he was supposed to theoretically be the backup for Manning, but then Ewer stayed. Manning was the backup, and then he transfers out. Right? Malik Murphy, I believe, was a five-star quarterback to Texas. But that's the level of this. Now, again, I'm not picking on him specifically, but like in the olden days or something, I guess the olden days of early 2000s, if he was eventually going to be like a first round quarterback, you'd be like, oh man, they had a first round quarterback just sitting there on the bench for 3 years. But that's not even the case anymore. With some of these guys, they just say, I'm just going to transfer it and start immediately. And sometimes
yep,
that works out for the better, sometimes it doesn't. But this is the thing. You're not like, oh yeah, I've got another couple first round couple first round players I'm just sitting on my bench right now that are just getting they're like you can't just throw out like another first round pass rusher when your other first round pass rusher is like resting. You can't do that anymore. That's not a thing you have anymore.
yeah, yeah. It's funny on that topic about just how deep improbably Saban got his team and was able to keep. I saw something. I think I was folding laundry, so I wasn't paying attention. I don't remember who it was. If you recognize him, you might know him since you're an NFL guy. But it was a guy who was talking to some former NFL players, and he said, after my junior season, the coaches came to me and said, "You got to go." And he was a running back, I think, and I got to go. They're like, "You got to go to the pros." I haven't even started a game here. They're like, "You're good enough. You got to go." And he's in the NFL. I mean, that's the kind of stuff like that. What is it like Miami Central High School? There's that one high school in Miami where okay, like their fourth running back will go to Iowa or something like that. That's just nuts. And to do that in the day and age, it's crazy. And I think it also obviously speaks to the commitment and the alignment with the administration too. You could have that best coach. I'll put it this way. I can't imagine that he would have been able to be as successful at a crazy place like Auburn with all the nonsense and idiocy and 43 people who all think that they're athletic director there and run that show. So maybe that's part of it too, is like he really was just the perfect confluence of an ascent of money coming in at a crazy rate and a commitment. The other thing too is they were really frustrated with after being embarrassed by Mike Price not even coaching the game and then Mike Shula just being so ordinary. As they just were going to do whatever it took. So they had a real serious, we're not effing around commitment here. And the money that just poured into it and the people that were able to line up behind him. I think that's now I talk about it's Saban clearly is the best ever, but I think that being at Alabama just probably gave him some more tailwinds, I guess, in that regard. Not that winning 7 national championships is easy.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. There's another Alabama guy in this list too here in Bear Bryant. It's I don't know. It's good. We can get to the whole blue blood discussion too, but this is going to be along the. There we go. Along the same lines as our last episode a little bit. I wanted to, and I threw this out there as a starting point. If I wanted to define what's a current excellent head coach today, proven winner. This is a little different than first time head coaches, the discussion that we just had, but literally a proven winner. I'm looking at conference titles, playoff appearances, those kind of things. The next one's subjective, but I think that this is important. If this coach won a national title within 5 years, I wouldn't be surprised. And then third, to your point, a down year. This is, I think, going back to Carroll and Saban, of course, is just a different discussion. Carroll and Meyer in Carroll's last season at USC when they took a step back. And remember at Urban Meyer, his last season at Florida, where everything was crumbling. He was having these crippling headaches and player revolts and stuff, and they still won 8 games. So a down year that's beyond mediocre. But I don't want a bad season. Like Mike Norvell, if he was on the list, he completely played himself off the list with that horrible season last year. His first season at Florida State was pretty rotten too. So you can't have that kind of a down season. I want to see at least 5 or 6 wins. Anything less than that is just not acceptable. So any other criteria that you can think of that basically, all right, if I'm looking at what I think is the excellent head coach today.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think there are some coaches that if you like you asked me if X coach would win a national championship within 5 years, I wouldn't be surprised, right? There's a bunch I could think of, and there's some that I know some people say are a good coach that if you told me Mario Cristobal is going to win a national championship in 5 years, I'd be surprised at that. I'd be like, wow, that's surprising, right? Like,
thank you for not spoiling the next slide. I appreciate that. Mario did not make the discussion.
Yes, but this is the thing, right? There are a bunch that I would not be surprised at, but there are some, and I think is a very fascinating line, right? And again, down year, mediocre, not bad. That kind of just, in many ways, that kind of describes Michigan last year. Mediocre, but not bad.
That's good. Good.
And this is the thing. That's kind of one of the things I look at on that. Like this year, and we will talk about Miami in the ACC podcast, which I think is going to be at this point about 3 hours long based on everything we want to talk about in that one. Where's the floor, right? If you like, and again, we're going to pick on Miami here. I think that a lot of Miami's success last year, basically all of it, was just literally down to Cam Ward running around a while and just finding a wide open receiver somewhere down the field and getting like a 30, 40-yard bomb. And that was a lot of the season, mind you. That was not like, this is the thing, right? Okay, your offense was clearly propping up your defense last year. I don't think your defense got better, and your offense definitely got worse. So, again, this is, how many points did Syracuse score on them? 40 something? Like, in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, how many points did Iowa State score on offense against them? Right?
I'm not going to buy bowls. Come on.
No, I know, but this is the thing.
It's
right?
a data point. It's a data point.
And remember, it was, who were they playing? It was Virginia Tech, right? Wasn't it Virginia Tech that they needed like literally a miracle to win that game? Right? This is where it's, if you don't have all of that magic, then this is the thing. It's like, where is the floor there? And I like, for some of these guys, it's just like, with them, I know that they are strong enough and they are smart enough to find ways to win games that you shouldn't win. And I think that's, for some coaches, it's like how, like, they lose games they should win. Like, for some of them, right? Like with Dan Lanning, he found ways. When he played Ohio State, he found a way to win that game, right? Cristobal found ways to lose games that he should have won. And that's just one example, right? James Franklin, in my opinion, he's never won a game he should have lost. Every time
All
he
right, don't
plays.
skip ahead. Don't
Okay,
skip
okay.
ahead.
We'll leave
Okay,
out him for
yeah.
a second.
Well,
But
yeah,
this
yeah.
is the thing, right? There is a very specific. There's a line there, and in my head at least,
Yeah.
it's pretty well defined for me. And I think for any sort of analysis for college football, you have to figure out where that line is, and you have to draw that in your head.
If we had another podcast about who's the best at illuminating that line, I think the discussion begins with Mario Cristobal, without a doubt.
Yeah,
So,
he is the
okay,
line.
yeah, I'm gonna try to do something a little tricky here. Give me a second. I'm gonna try to grab our definitions here, and then bring them to the next slide over here. Bear with me for 1 second. Oops, sorry. I'm just gonna try to paste this real quick.
Mm-hmm.
All right, just so we have this handy as we're going over this. Okay. All right. So I've got 3 categories here for the coaches. I've got basically, and we'll discuss them all. I'm not saying that you have to agree with me. I've got the currently excellent. I've got interesting discussions, and then guys that I think are mortally flawed and out of this discussion. And then right below that is where Mario comes in. I think I've got 4 guys here that I would just consider without a doubt excellent: Kirby, Ryan Day, Signetti, and DeBoer. Feels a little weird because we are recalibrating here, and that's how recalibration feels, I think. But those are my takes. Which ones do you take issue with on those 4, if any?
I I agree with Kirby Smart and Ryan Day 100%. Those 100% are on there. I want to put an asterisk beside Signetti just for the simple reason that at Indiana, no. But somewhere else, yes. Because I think there's a ceiling for Indiana, and I think he's if not there, very close to it.
In
Like,
terms of the 5-year thing.
yeah, like that's the thing. Could I imagine? Do I see Signetti winning a national championship? Yes. Do I see him winning it with an Indiana logo on his chest? No. The thing.
Let me just give you I don't know if I've told you about this. After Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois, our buddy Dylan reached out to me and said, head coaches, when they fire Freeman, who should they go after? And I said, you're not going to fire him. That would be dumb. Number 2, the guy who would scare me to death would be Signetti.
Yeah.
I would frame it a different way. If he went to Notre Dame, I would be shocked if he didn't win a national title within 5 years.
Yeah. And like I think we're now at a point where if Indiana is good again this year, 8+ wins, 8, 9, 10 wins again this year, at this point you're just waiting for something to drop. Oh, okay. Did Brian Kelly have a bad year at LSU? Did Lane Kiffin have a bad year at USC? Did Billy Napier have a bad year at Florida? One of those, he's right there. He's right there, and that will be it. Right? That's the thing, and that is a terrifying thought for any one of those schools. If you're one of those schools, have Cinetti's number, have his agent's number, take him to a steak dinner now, a preemptive steak dinner now. Do that. Meet him now. That's the thing. But no, that's the thing. He's a good head coach. The fact that he has gotten Indiana to where it was to where it is now from where it was, just insane, an absolute insane turnaround there. Kalen DeBoer, I think there's one thing that I want to wait a little bit longer on DeBoer because I think the way that this kind of gets distorted is if your team is just better than every other team. And I think Washington might have been that 2 years ago. I think 2 years ago, Washington was just a better team than literally everyone else. Right? And it's possible, right? With Michael Penix Jr., all those wide receivers, it might have just been a better team than literally every other team. And remember, Michigan took out Ohio State that year. And that was Ohio State with. Oh, that was. No,
that was Kyle McCord.
Yeah, McCord, that's right. Yeah, that's right. That was 2 years ago. Yeah. So this is the thing. They took them out, and then Washington just had to play Texas. And then I think Michigan took out. Who was the SEC team? Georgia.
Alabama in overtime,
That's right.
right?
Yeah, Alabama in overtime. Yeah, and then Michigan won the national championship that year. This is the thing where it's like when you look at this stuff, is it like all he had to do was beat up a Texas team, and we're getting to Steve Sarkisian. We're a couple boxes away from him in a second here, but this is the thing, right? If your team is just better than every other team, that's how you distort this.
Yeah, yeah. The one thing about DeBoer is, and this is a little, I'm going beyond the Washington thing. He when he went to Fresno State, he took over a bad situation and had them turned around pretty quickly. This is crazy. He coached 5 seasons at Sioux Falls. In 5 seasons, he had 3 national championships and one championship game loss and one loss in the semifinal. That's a pretty good run. Now I know that's NAIA; it's very different, but my gosh, the guy knows how to win. And I guess to that, his worst season is COVID 3-3. His first year at Fresno. After that, his worst season was Alabama last season at 9-4. I'd agree with you that he might be the weakest case, but I don't know. One point of context on him is I was for years just so excited about when Saban would retire and just wanting to see what Alabama would come. I always said this would be like post Saddam Iraq in college football. And they hired this guy who's very calm and smart and a good coach and a winner. And this is disappointing.
This could have been way more fun.
Yeah, yeah. It could have been like Auburn down the road. So fair. Okay. So the next box, I think with the postseason, Marcus Freeman somehow in less than 4 months, Marcus Freeman went from our guy Dylan saying, "Okay, Freeman's fired," to I think he's probably close to being one of the next ones on the list. I mean, he was awesome in the postseason
Mm-hmm.
and towards the end of the regular season too.
I think it's because they finally, now that he's figured out they have an offense that's not horrible and they got rid of their offensive coordinator who is now destroying Troy. Now that you have that, I think now they're actually doing well. And again, like they took out Georgia, and that was not a particularly easy out. They took out Georgia. I think that was actually a harder out than Ohio State had with Texas. And yeah, okay,
Yep.
you didn't beat Ohio State in the national championship game. Ohio State is Ohio State. But honestly, you kept it competitive. And honestly, again, like you're building this up. The quarterback wasn't the greatest for Notre Dame either in the national championship game. So this is the thing. Like you give him time, you get him like the last 2 years they haven't had a great quarterback. It's just been an okay quarterback. If you get them a great quarterback and you continue to build up that team, yeah, that team is scary. That's a very scary team to have to face.
Yeah, and considering he was in the title game this year, I would be surprised if he wins the national title in 5 years. Not at all. All right, James Franklin, you started to go down this road. I'll set it up to you with this. You made very good point in our off-season catch-up thing in that I think Franklin earned some respect by winning 2 playoff games. I think that there needs to be a big caveat in that it basically he had a pretty kind road getting a team from Texas at home when it's 12 degrees in state college, and that team just didn't show up and turned the ball over like 10 times. And then you get the team that shouldn't be there in Boise State. You get one of those. But still, I was joking forever like his destiny was to be the first guy to lose a college football playoff game. And he put that right in my face. It'll be interesting I'll say this. I think that this season, and we've probably said this about him for the last 6, but this is it. This is the highest expectations of Penn State coming into a season that I can remember.
Yeah.
Phil still has him. Not that Phil's field is dispositive, but I think it's pretty reflective of. I think most people have Penn State ahead of Ohio State, and basically most of the other powers not named Georgia or Texas in terms of national rankings. So I think this is where you really are going to see is he capable of making that next step?
I think no. I think the reason people have Penn State ahead of Ohio State is that they lost the least. So
Yep.
they just stayed where they were, and they're penciling in Drew Aller being better, and he might be better, but I don't like the way that James Franklin wins the Heisman. This is like the Doctor Strange. I've seen 3 million possibilities. It's just his team is just better than literally every other team in college football. And I don't think it is. And it's not just, oh, it's a little bit better. It's like he has to be a lot better than every other team. He has to go back to Alabama in like the early 2000s where it's, oh, here's like Derrick Henry, go run. It's just like, what is, oh, and then let's throw a couple of first round pass rushers at you too. That's literally what it has to be for him to win a national championship. I don't think he has that this year. Maybe he does. I don't know. But he has to be at that level. If not, he's not gonna have it. The thing is it's like with James Franklin, and I've been betting on Penn State now for several years now, both ways. Usually in games, he definitely knows the spread. That's for sure.
Is that another criteria for what's an excellent head coach? He knows the
No,
spread.
that is not a criteria, but it's a good criteria for deciding whether or not to bet on a spread when you're close on the line there. But I think back, and I cannot think of a single game that they should have lost but won. They have lost every game they were expected to lose and won every game they were expected to win. And that even that Ohio State last year lost.
I was going to say, going back to Ohio State, like 2015, they should have lost that game, but they won.
Yeah,
on a blocked field goal. Stupid thing.
Was he that coach then? I think.
Yeah. That was when they played USC in the Rose Bowl. That was 2016 season.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That was a long time ago though. But yes, it was. But I feel like just every year, it's just, oh, okay, they're underdog in this game and they lose that game. Oh, okay, they're a favorite in the game, they win that game. Maybe not cover the spread either way, but it's just you could tell just based on they go to the Big Ten championship game. Everybody's like, this is his chance.
I was about to mention that. Yeah,
and then
please.
And I like immediately was like, no, Oregon minus 3.5. My model didn't have it. I think my model had it somewhat close. I'm like, no, Oregon minus 3.5. It was never in question, never in doubt.
I do want to bring up specifically. I wanted to talk about that specifically in that was different in it. Like in these other big games, like particularly the Ohio State games, it's almost always like he's calling plays with two hands around his neck. He just don't screw it up. And that Oregon game was different. They couldn't stop Oregon. Nobody could stop Oregon until the postseason, until the Rose Bowl. Yeah. But they traded punches with Oregon through that whole game. They weren't a threat. At no point did I think Penn State's got this, but it wasn't like they were gripping themselves out of it. And maybe it's because I don't know, maybe it's because they knew they had to play loose and easy. I think that he has finally somehow stumbled into an offensive coordinator that works with him since Joe Moorhead and Kotelnicki, and Dollar was so much better that, again, I think that this season, it's not just the expectations. Now I'm talking me, not the market. He's got a proven quarterback. He's got a huge advantage at quarterback over literally the rest of the league. And he's got an offensive coordinator that finally works with him. I'll put it this way: if not now, then never. But I think that there's not. I say there's. It feels like I'm saying there's more of a chance that it can be now than you think. Sounds like you're in the never category.
Fair. What I would say is that you could make the argument that, like, on paper, Penn State was better than, like, Drew Aller's going to be a first-round quarterback next year. Maybe not 1, but 5. Within 5 picks easily. Dylan Gabriel was 5th or 6th. Will Howard 6th, 7th, something like that. Like, they lost to both of them pretty convincingly, right? Like, this is the thing where it's like you can make an argument that, like, Penn State on paper had a better quarterback than both those teams. Still lost it. In some cases, not even close. Now, it's not on Drew Aller. 100% that's not on Drew Aller. Drew Aller could be a very good NFL quarterback. But this is the thing where it's, okay, if not, this is the year. This is the, if not now, then when. This is 100% this year. But if you said you have $100 to bet on who's going to win the Big Ten, I don't put that on Penn State. I'm finding something else. Like, I don't. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm crazy. But I would not put that on Penn State. That's me. I could be wrong. Maybe James Franklin will surprise us this year. But I've just not seen him find ways to win games that he should have lost. Dan Lanning, 100% I have. Ryan Day, when it's not Michigan, yes. I've seen him find ways to win games that he should have lost. Except against Michigan, which their team just gives up for some weird reason. I'm not sure why that happens, but I'm sure they'll fix that at some point in the next 20 years. But this is the thing. It's like, but you're like, this is the thing. If not this year, then when? Like, you can't get it. Like, we talked about that mythical scenario where, like, he has, like, a ton of first round draft picks. Okay, maybe he's never going to get that many. But, like, this year, he's going to have more first round draft picks probably than Oregon, probably than Ohio State. If it's not this year, what year is it? Which year is it? This is one of his best shots. If he can't do it this year, now maybe he could win the Big Ten, go on a deep playoff run. Maybe that's what happens. But will he get stopped in like the semis or the finals or something? I don't know. Maybe he loses the Big Ten. I don't know. There's a couple of ways this could shake out, but I don't know. I don't. They're going to be a competitive team. They're going to make the playoff. That's the bet you would make on that. But you're telling me that you'd want the money on James Franklin in the Big Ten championship game against another good team, against either Ohio State or an Oregon or a Indiana or an Illinois or a Michigan. If that's Michigan, are you telling me Sharon Moore? I take Sharon Moore over Franklin.
I think Indiana would be the really interesting one there, considering that we've got a first column guy. Let's say this: James Franklin, if he wins the Big Ten, he stays in this column. If he makes a deep playoff, if he wins it, then I don't even, he might go to here. I'll have to see it to believe it. If he doesn't win the Big Ten, he goes to the next column here. Is that fair?
Yeah, fair.
Okay. All right. This next one is tough because, like Marcus Freeman and like the next guy on the list, he only has 3 years, but he's been pretty freaking solid in 3 years. Mike Elko. That first season at Duke was amazing. He was on schedule to do the same thing until Riley Leonard got hurt. Duke was in a bad spot too. And obviously, Duke being Duke. And let's not forget just what embarrassment A&M was. The seasons, plural,
Yeah.
many, before he came in. And he was a game away from making the SEC title game and probably the playoff then, right? If he had beaten Texas.
Mm-hmm. No,
Um,
that's the thing, right? I, it's a bit early, but yeah, I think he deserves to be in that. Because again, to be fair, he was at Duke for a while in there, right? Like, he's, I guess, 2 years behind Dan Lanning, if that makes sense.
yeah, because the Duke 2 years at Duke is not a good analog to 2 years at Oregon,
Yeah, that's it. So
especially with the roster that Mario.
this is he last year was like Dan Lanning's first year at Oregon, and the next year they
Yeah,
like made the Big Ten, the Big 12, Big Pac-12, sorry, Pac-12 championship game. So that's the line, I guess. If Elko can find his way there this year, then yeah, okay, we're right there, and he could. The SEC is wide open, right? How many SEC coaches do we have on this list? Half of them, right?
a lot of them. Yeah,
That's the thing. So
yeah,
this is the thing. It's tough. If he can pull it off, sure, but we'll see.
yep. Dan Lanning. I'll put it. This is going to come across wrong. Well, let's say this. He's in that. He's basically. I'm going to try to do an analogy here. It's going to be wrong. Hopefully, my dog can give me some comfort and help me along here. I think he's in the same situation now, without regard to time, where Franklin is. It's not like a now or never. It's almost opposite. I think if Lanning can win a couple more over the next 10 years, if that makes sense, he's definitely got a chance to. He'll definitely stay here. I can't imagine him playing himself off this column.
No.
It'll need to be like a series of things. Okay, USC's literally taking everybody in the West Coast, and he makes a horrible hire on some coordinator position that's just a fatal thing. But the structure's too sound at Oregon there. So I think Lanning's kind of safely here with a lot of time to play himself into the first column. Does that sound fair?
So the interesting thing about Lanning, so I can't remember where I saw this. Maybe it was some online definition or something. But it's like the number, the way you can define the number two team in any sort of sports league is a team that beats every other team but loses to the number one team.
I was about to say this. Go ahead. Yes. I
Yeah,
think you're going where I'm going to go.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the number one team is the team that's the best team. It beats most of the other teams, could lose the other teams, but it always beats the number two team. And I feel like Dan Lanning is like that definition of the number two team. And I see this. I obviously I follow college football, and I'm sure you'll follow the sports as well. But I follow a ton of esports, which is a ton of different leagues, and I see this a lot where it's like the number two team is better than every other team, but then they get to that one team they can't beat, and then they just crumble. And it was for two years ago with Dan Lanning, it was Washington. He lost them in the regular season, lost them in the Pac-12 championship game because
Yep.
it's like he could, and it was weird because it's like the first time they were slight underdogs because they were in Washington and they barely lost that game, and they covered the spread in that game too. And
They
then
lost a handful of plays that
yeah,
went wrong for them.
and then
Yeah.
after that game, Washington just had a horrible stretch of weeks, but they looked horrible. And I remember that spread; they were 9.5 point underdogs. They were 9.5 point underdogs to Oregon in the Big Pac-12 championship game, and they won outright. And it's just that was an insane underperformance there by Oregon. And then Oregon, right, like last year, beat Ohio State in the regular season, won a game they shouldn't have won. And then they get to the Rose Bowl. Now, it's very arguable they should not have been playing Ohio State in the Rose Bowl because that was really dumb. But whatever, that's fixed for this year. That's fine. But again, they get absolutely destroyed. Not even close. Not a competitive game. And it's just like we give them the pass because it was so out of character for them for the entire regular season. But that was not the Oregon team we saw in the regular season at all. And it's even then, it's just, okay, last year you had both Bo Nix, you had a first-round NFL quarterback. So what do? You go to Oklahoma, who they just, I guess, discarded Dylan Gabriel. You pick him off from Oklahoma, and you almost make it to a championship game, right? This is the thing. I just threw my pen there. This is the thing, right? We talk about this because this is coaching level of a team up. If Oklahoma really believed that Dylan Gabriel was a quarterback capable of leading them to a national championship, why'd they have Jackson Arnold? Why would you replace him with Jackson Arnold if you thought that? But yet Dan Lanning clearly had him at that level. And again, Dante Moore, they picked him up from basically scraps from UCLA, right? Literally picked him up 2 years ago, and he's been sitting on the bench. Because remember, Dante Moore had some flashes of brilliance with UCLA, but had like more turnovers than those flashes of brilliance. And it was perfect. At the time, we said this was really smart. You sit him for a year, you clean that up, and what can he do a year from now? And like now we get to see that. And it's like again, he coached up Bo Nix, again, picking him off. Literally he just finds these quarterbacks, bargain basement, coaches them up to almost like NFL caliber prospects. Dylan Gabriel, yeah, whatever. But Bo Nix, like a first round overall pick, again, far better than anybody would have thought from what he looked like at Auburn. I think in some ways that's the mark of a really good coach, a coach that should be on this list. The problem is it's like there's clearly something there in those big games. I'm not sure if it's on him. Maybe it's on some way he coaches. Maybe they need to deal with pressure better in some of these situations. I don't know. But for somehow there's this block. And I think sometimes I have this too, especially in sports modeling and in other modeling I do for my line of work. A lot of people will, if a model like works and it's okay, then if they encounter a block on it, they'll just say, oh, if I adjusted this, it would have been fine. So then they don't fix anything. But if he says, like, for example, right? So like, I'll use the example of the most recent Canadian election. And I guess we're going to like inadvertently call out some people on Twitter. I'm not going to actually name their names. But basically what happened was, and again, the story of the Canadian election on Twitter was that we had it close the entire time. We had the Liberals winning the most amount of seats, but we still had it close, much more competitive than anybody else had it. All the other modelers had a massive Liberal majority. We had a Liberal majority, but a relatively small one, the smallest of anyone. And then obviously the Liberals won a minority. It was very close. Could have been a majority, but they narrowly defeated narrowly a minority. But one of the reasons for it was the polling miss. Now on our side, for my company, we didn't have that polling miss. Our poll was the most accurate in Canada, so that helped a lot, obviously. But a lot of the other modelers on Twitter said, oh, if we plugged in the right numbers, we would have been a lot closer, so it's fine. And that's the wrong way to take modeling and coaching in general. It's because one way you could have looked at that, Dan Lanning could have looked at the Rose Bowl and said, oh, you know what, if we had a really bad game, if we didn't have a bad game, we would have been fine. He could easily just say, that's fine. We had a better game. We would have been competitive. But even me, like literally from that election, like our model did amazingly well. We beat literally every other model. This isn't even the polling. We obviously crushed it. But even on the modeling side, we beat literally every other model. And I'm still sitting here. I'm like, model should have seen that seat. Should have had that seat. That's what I do. Now I'm crazy, I know. But this is the thing, and this is what you need to have as head coach. And I hope Dan Lanning takes that approach after the season, because now it's clearly 2 years in a row where he's seeing the same issue come up twice now in the Pac-12 championship game last year and the Rose Bowl this year. It's the same issue in these big games, and he's got to figure out some way to get beyond that. And that's the truly mark of a good coach. If he can do that, he's going to be the next one to win a national championship game.
You hit on two things I want to follow up on. Going back to your bargain bin quarterbacks, agree 100%. And I might posit maybe that might be a limiting factor in some of these big games. Possibly. Maybe. The other thing too, it's amazing, and you danced around this without explicitly saying it, but when you're saying like, well, he lost this and he lost that, and then he's played himself like almost between he's still in this column, but it's interesting is, all right, he won the Big Ten title game last year over this guy who it's his last chance salon here before he goes to the mortally flawed column, right? And all right, he beat Ryan Day in the regular season, but like in the bigger game, just got walloped by him. Couldn't beat this guy who's in like the first column. It's near term. He can play himself right here, but he needs to I'd love to see him against Indiana this year. Does Oregon play Indiana? Do we know?
I don't know. I don't know off the top of my head. Really fun.
The sign of a great host is somebody who asks questions and he has no idea what the answer is. Let's look this up here. That's Ohio State, Oregon. Ooh, they host Indiana.
Ooh.
October 11th in the middle of Locktober. Prime real estate right there. That's the game. I don't even know a lot of people are talking about that. I don't want to spoil a Big Ten, but I think Indiana is going to be maybe better than you think, but we'll see. Anyways, Dan Lanning, that's a fascinating kind of arc to watch develop this year, especially because I don't think anybody has them preseason ahead of Penn State. So get back to the hunter instead of the hunted, which is probably fits him better, it seems like, too.
Yeah.
All right. Very different. And I think we're here technically, but I have to discuss it. Billy Napier was so good at, I think then they were still going by ULL, Louisiana Lafayette. He came into a rough situation at Florida. The quarterback position, I think 0% his fault, got screwed up. You saw a very different Florida team once he actually got a good quarterback at Florida. Here's the problem. That third bullet point, down year. We've had some down years here. That's the problem. But he was so good at Lafayette. He was so good. And I think people are just completely forgetting that. I think he's barely in this column. I don't see a fatal flaw as long as I think the fatal flaw is basically the circumstances that he walked into in Florida being very late to getting their NIL act together. So I think probably he's on my list here, but probably not a lot of people's list in this column. Is that fair?
Yeah, I agree. He's like the borderline between interesting discussions and mortally flawed. I would say that you do raise an interesting point, right? We say that one of the credits for Dan Lanning is able to coach up a bargain quarterback. What is that if not Graham Mertz? Right? That is the textbook.
Come on. You're going to compare Graham Mertz to Dylan Gabriel?
Well, it's even worse, right? That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's not as good, but you can make the argument that the delta was actually bigger from where Graham Mertz was to where Graham Mertz got. Again, there's a difference between coaching a guy who's horrible to being okay versus a guy who was like okay to national championship. But there's a difference there. It's more difficult to go from okay to national championship, but the delta, like a far better improvement. Now, then again, literally 2 games into the season got benched because he was horrible in the second season. So I'm not sure. There's some question marks about that. But again, though, like that's a not horrible sign for a head coach. Not horrible. And again, at least you're trying with a high degree of difficulty. It's like the figure skater trying the higher degree of difficulty jump, right? This is the thing. So it's not. There's a little bit of Dan Lanning there. A little bit of Dan Lanning. Again, the down year, mediocre, not bad. Again, they had one of the toughest schedules in all of college football last year. Somehow made a bowl. I think the year before their schedule wasn't easy either. They've had a couple of years of some really rough schedules. But they had
the toughest schedule last year, didn't they?
They did. Yeah, but they've been competitive, right? They've been competitive with Georgia, mostly. They took out Tennessee last year, a team that made the college football playoff. So it's not horrible, but at the same time, it's not. We just haven't. Again, like if you saw like a 9 or a 10 win Florida team, you'd feel a lot more comfortable putting him here.
Mm-hmm.
But you just haven't had it. And you think of some of the NIL stuff, right? Travis Etienne was a running back for Georgia last year for some reason, right? Like they
Uh-huh.
made a lot of mistakes on NIL. And I think they're still finally figuring that out, which is, again, something that a program with the pedigree of Florida should not have, but it did. So this is the thing, right? It's where do you go from here? Is this is the year for Billy Napier. You have the quarterback you claim. You've been able to have your system for a while now. Can you actually turn this around and make this one of the best teams in the country? I think there's a possibility he can. But if he can't, then he goes to mortally flawed, and then we talk about him differently. But this is the prove it here. It's you got one shot at this. I will say that I hadn't really seen him win games he should have lost until probably this last year. There was a couple where, like, there were like he won
Well,
games he probably should have lost. I think that's
yeah,
the positive of that. But there he had definitely
yeah,
games he lost and he probably should have won though. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. But I think there is some, especially towards the end of last year when they beat LSU, when they beat Ole Miss, when they beat Tennessee, there were some positive signs there, and they were competitive against Georgia. There are positive signs there. The question is just, can they put it all together for a full year and be one of the top teams?
yeah. Oh, and by prove it to me, that's 9 wins this season
Yeah,
is a prove it. Okay. And I just have to go back 4 seasons at Louisiana, tied for first in the West, won the West outright, won the West outright, won the West outright. 4 seasons, he went 27-5 in conference. Might remember he beat a pretty good Iowa State team in the first week, I think, of the 21 season, I believe. And I guess the other thing too is I don't know what his fatal flaw is. It's almost like it's not working. It's not working out. And you bring up the ETN thing. How much of that is Billy Napier versus the administration?
yeah. You can't
So
coach someone who's not there because they didn't pay him money.
exactly. Sneaky one. The next one here, Josh Heupel. Let's not forget he went undefeated his first year at UCF. Then he went back to an 8-win team. I think his first season at Tennessee, 8 wins as well.
They beat Purdue in the bowl. That was that controversial bowl game, right? Or did they lose to Purdue in that game? Or am I thinking
I
someone
think they.
else? No, I think they
I don't know if
lost.
that was.
Was that Heupel?
Yeah.
I can't remember. But no, you're right. No, like he was good at UCF, brought Tennessee up a little bit, then almost made the 14 playoff with Tennessee, had the
Yep.
down year after that. Last year did make the playoff with a quarterback who apparently didn't particularly want to be there. But then he got blown out by Ryan Day, though. Right? So I,
As everybody did, right? Though.
yeah, as everybody did in the playoff.
Not. Yeah.
I think he is going to play jump rope over the line between excellent and interesting discussions. Because I just think the problem is that they're not consistent enough at recruiting. Like, I think the reason why after Hendon Hooker left, they had a down year was because they didn't have a good answer. And then now Nico's gone. Maybe you have a good answer this year. I don't know. But if you don't, then they're going to be mediocre. And then again, like if they do have a down year this year, I'm going to be the first to bet Tennessee over Tennessee playoff the next year.
That's a
Like
good point. Yeah.
that's the thing. So I don't know what they're going to be this year, but I know he's good. And one of the reasons why he's good is his system is so simple and so hard to beat. They can't beat it, but it's easy for his players to learn. So this is the thing where it's if they can't pull it off this year, then what next year immediately you're gonna get like Tennessee 4-1 to make the playoff, just like instant bet that, right? That's the thing. So
Yep.
he's gonna play jump rope with this line. I know that, and I think again, people can't have 1.8 babies. Kind of expected line right on that line. He should be right between them.
Yeah. To go back to a horse racing analogy, which I love to do, this season seems like the first time starter that just completely missed the break, and they're gonna start off like way behind the field. Maybe they come on strong at the end. Just the way that the spring practice fell out with Nico leaving at the very end, and you get Joey Aguilar who has 0 spring practices. I think that they're just on a different kind of rail than the rest of the SEC. It's I won't say it's mission impossible. It's a really tough ask, and to your point, whatever they can do just to get up to speed for next season is really what you're keeping your eye on here. Just develop. They've had some turnover in wide receiver, so maybe that's just working towards that. John Summerall. I bring this up because in only 3 years, I was stumbling on this a couple episodes ago. 2 seasons at Troy, two conference titles, 1 season at Tulane, makes the conference title game, loses to Army. Very well thought of. His worst year was what, at Tulane, not winning the title. How dare you, Mr. Summerall? He's not going to win a national title at Tulane. I could very easily, I'll put it this way. If Hugh Freeze gets fired from Auburn, it's a little early. I could see Summerall. I wouldn't be surprised if in 5 years he won a national title. I could think he could very easily get Auburn in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think so too.
Then this last one's tough. This is tougher than Kalen in that Leipold, his record at Wisconsin Whitewater was like 105-8 losses or something just absurd like that. Went to a horrible situation in Buffalo, had him in the title game twice for the MAC at a place that like just they never do anything good. I'm going to make a exception to the down year as me. Well, let's say it this way. I think 2 wins, like he had his first season at Kansas, is mediocre. That's not bad, considering that it's Kansas. I'll put it this way. The reason I wouldn't see him winning a national title is it seems like there's something that the national title caliber programs don't like about him. If that does that seem fair?
I just think he hasn't had that breakout year here at Kansas yet. I think if you can't go from Buffalo to Auburn or something, or Tennessee or something. Like,
Yeah.
he needed to go somewhere else first, and he just hasn't had that breakout year yet. Whether or not it's been Jalen Daniels getting injured twice now, or just not being good or something. It's just he hasn't had that breakout year. And if he had that breakout year, like if he won the Big 12 this year, whatever, all of a sudden we're talking about, oh, okay, yeah, he's going to the SEC or the Big 10. That's the thing. So I think there is a line there. I don't know. He just needs to have that breakout season, and he's getting closer to it. Again, mediocre, not bad seasons. He's had a couple of those. He's had good seasons with Kansas, and he's had mediocre seasons with Kansas, but he's never been able to jump over that line of, oh, okay, we're good now.
Yeah, let me phrase this. So this is interesting. You brought up something that jogged something in my memory. I think is an interesting, quick discussion. So as he was having that magical season at Kansas, when Kodolnicki was still there, that would be 3 seasons ago, I believe. Yeah, there was an opening at Auburn, and there was an opening at Wisconsin, and I know Auburn was interested in him or talking to his people. Wisconsin, it was thought that he was going to go there because it was at Wisconsin Whitewater where he had that crazy record in the NAIA or wherever he was at. My question to you is, do you think if they had to do it over, Wisconsin or Auburn would have hired him instead of Luke Fickell or Hugh Freeze?
They probably should have.
What do you think they think? Like the fans are like the fans. Do you think they're
Wisconsin,
thinking like, oh, we should?
Wisconsin, yes. Auburn, no. Weirdly, I think Auburn people are. I think they think they're okay, but they're not okay. I think that's a problem. Wisconsin, though, I think definitely, yeah. I think that's very clearly that didn't work out. And I think, again, when you look at some of these jobs that could potentially be coming up, Wisconsin could be coming up, Auburn could be coming up, Arkansas could potentially be coming up too at some point, right? There are a
Mhm.
lot of these kind of middle, and you don't want to call Wisconsin middle Big Ten, but there are some of the Wisconsin's kind of upper and Auburn's kind of upper too. But there are some of these jobs where, hey, if you have a breakout year this year, you get to the Big 12 championship game, 100% that you could be get one of those jobs, right? So
Mhm.
he's not there. I don't think there's no mortal flaw because it just seems like for his teams, whenever everything's okay, they can upset anybody. But then something
Yeah.
always goes wrong, and then all of a sudden it's we now have like 6 losses now because our star quarterback got injured for 4 weeks or something.
Yeah. And he was actually, I think, one of the first ones going back to what we talked about our last episode too. When he came to Kansas, he brought a ton of guys from Buffalo, a ton. And I think that's why, again, 2 wins usually sucks, but at Kansas, that beat their season win total over
Mhm.
under. So it was a successful season. Yeah, I think there's still more to be written in his biography for sure in terms of his coaching career. All right. the mortally flawed category here. I'm going to say what I think their fatal flaw is for each of these guys, and then let me just go through all six, then you can just tell me any additional thoughts. Brian Kelly, I think he's an awesome coach. I think he's literally as good a coach in most aspects. He yells too much at his players. I hate to be so simple and reductive, but I think that act just doesn't work today. Dabo doesn't believe in the portal. He's less insular now. He's brought in coordinators from outside the program, but I think that he's a little old in his thinking that is not going to play so well. Whittingham, similarly, a little too rock'em sock'em, a little too early 90s kind of football, which I think there's a limit there. It'll be interesting this season. Know what you're getting in terms of a good defense, but I think what you're getting usually in terms of a low ceiling on the offense. We've talked about this for years. The late game stuff, I can't trust him on that. Lane Kiffin it just tends to be his own worst enemy in terms of, I don't know if a program better than Mississippi will ever look to hire him because of all that he brings. And Lincoln Riley needs to prove that he can coach. He can have a defense on his team. It's just that simple.
Yeah.
I guess maybe start with this. Which do you think are like chronically fatal? Chronically fatal. Which ones do you think can be cured in this list?
I think Lane Kiffin, because he's shown growth. Brian Kelly is very interesting because you can make an argument that at Notre Dame they just always had a schedule of teams that they could beat, and then they beat them, and then the second they get into a playoff, they'd just be outclassed and they'd lose. And I think the fact that Marcus Freeman was finally able to take them deep into a playoff kind of shows that, hey, maybe it wasn't just Brian Kelly keeping this program afloat. I think Dabo is similar. I think so many of these guys are basically very similar to that kind of James Franklin, where it's like they don't win the game that they shouldn't have won. Like Brian Kelly's maybe able to pull off a couple of upsets, but honestly, every time they go play Clemson, they lose. Dabo, yeah, okay, a couple of times they'd play, a couple of times he won a couple of national championships. But like you had a first overall quarterback in Deshaun Watson, you had a ton of other talent on that team as well. So this is the thing where it's kind of, okay, his team is just better than every other team. He was going to win, right? Kyle Whittingham, he's okay, but I don't think the ceiling is far lower than a national championship. I think the ceiling is like a Big 12 championship game and like maybe 1 or 2 rounds of the playoff, and that's it. And I think part of that
is Utah.
It's Utah. Fair. That's the thing. It's Utah, and I think that fundamentally he's even said, yeah, I'm not going to be here that long. So I think he knows he's going to retire relatively soon. Sark, another famous one for the podcast. But again, and I'll repeat what I said in our first podcast too. I've bet Archie Manning to win the Heisman, and I bet Archie Manning to win to be first overall pick next year. I have not bet Texas to win the SEC, and I have not bet Texas to win to win the national championship game. There's a reason why the bets are laid out that specific way. Yes, Sark can stop them from winning the SEC, but he can't stop. He probably won't be. Like the defense, like there's always something wrong. He's never able to completely put it together. And yeah, can he get Archie Manning a Heisman? Yeah, but you could do that by going 10-2 and losing in the SEC championship game. That's the thing. And I think that's why you play the future market that way.
Can I jump in real quick?
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Well, finish your thought on that, because I just want to finish up on Sark something before we move on.
Yeah, no, and that's why you play it that way. Again, the second he played against Washington, lost against Washington in the big game. Yep, he played against Clemson, beat Clemson, okay, but Clemson was not particularly good last year. It's a miracle. Like, Dabo's a miracle worker in getting them to the ACC championship game and then sometimes winning it. But then also that's the ceiling, because then now we're at a point where his team is just not deep enough. He can't rely on that anymore. Okay, he did that. They almost lost to Arizona State as a 14-point favorite, and then they lost to Ohio State. They kept it close against Ohio State, but then they lost. Again, I think he's a very similar coach in many ways to James Franklin.
And you hit on a little bit then. The thing that maybe best exemplifies why I think he's mortally flawed is actually a game that he won. It was that game against Arizona State, because that game should not have been that close. All season I said Texas is historically good on defense. Historically, not just like really good. Like I think that was probably the strongest defensive metrics I had seen for any team in how long I've been doing it, like 8 years or so, however, yeah, 9, how long it goes back. The fact that he let everybody's, I everybody loves Dillingham and Scatabo and all that, but they shouldn't have let that team get back in it. The fact that became life and death is exactly why I think that's his flaw. I saw that up close so many times at SC. I think he's it's not as bad now, but I think it's still part of his DNA.
Mhm. Lane Kiffin again. I think he has shown progress. He has definitely evolved in the last like 3 years. In last like again, there was a time when he was 21.5 point underdogs to Alabama. This last year he was 3. That's a massive difference. And yeah, they couldn't pull off the win in the big game. I think that might have been a bit on Jackson Dart. But again, Jackson Dart, this is a quarterback that USC literally threw away. So this is again kind of bargain bin. And he was
Yeah.
a first round pick this year. Or second, no, first round, the Giants, not second round. Lincoln Riley again.
Oh, one more thing
Oh,
on
go ahead.
Kevin, real quick. Along the same lines as Whittingham too. It's Ole Miss, guys. Okay, in a tough conference. This is a second-ish, almost third-ish tier program in a really tough conference. So do with that
Yeah,
what you will.
there's expectations. Lincoln
Yeah.
Riley though, this one is difficult, right? Because he did a lot at Oklahoma, but again, like you now start asking some questions like, okay, yeah, you had these amazing offenses. You won a couple, like several people Heisman's. Okay, was that because every other team in the Big 12 sucked except for one? Oh yeah, great. It's great if you can torch Oklahoma State for 500 yards. But if you like, this is where I think that like the era of the 12-team playoff is now. Like in the past, Oklahoma would do that, and then they maybe win the Big 12, and they'd have 2 losses, and then they wouldn't make the
Mm-hmm.
2-team playoff, or maybe they wouldn't make the 4-team playoff. But now it's okay, you're going now, and now you have to see them play an SEC team, and they could get crushed. You get to see that difference now, and that's where we would have seen that had that happened. But they got to avoid because they went to the playoff and they got crushed by LSU one year, absolutely crushed, and that like multiple scores. And the thing is like although his program at USC hasn't been horrible, the defense, his offense has been pretty good. But again, he had Caleb Williams, the first overall pick, won the Heisman. I think he won the Heisman. Yeah, he won the Heisman. And first round quarterback for the Bears has not been able to replicate that since. Is it the fact that he just needs to have an insane quarterback to make this all work? Because if he doesn't, then he's not good. Like this is the question, and maybe he'll get that back, maybe he won't. I don't know, but this is the question: is where's that line? So I think he can get into the interesting discussions, but if it's at the point where he needs to have a quarterback that can win the Heisman, that's a little concerning.
It's a double-edged sword. It's okay, but maybe that's what he does. You know what I mean? I mean, my God, he's had a lot of Heisman finalists here. I like your criteria of winning the games that you should have lost or losing the ones you should have won. I will. One of those pivotal games was against Georgia in the playoff at the Rose Bowl. They led. Georgia came back, a really good Georgia team. I overheard some Georgia guy telling his buddy that Oklahoma team's the best I've ever seen, which is saying a lot for an SEC guy to say that. But that's the kind of game, to your point, like you need to win to move up a box here. The one, and this kind of ties a bow in it too. The one game I can say, yeah, he won and he should have lost is in 2021 when he fell well behind. Go to my pointer here, get my laser pointer here. Come on. Well behind and came back against, against Steve Sarkisian's Texas team. Remember the big Caleb comeback
Yes,
in Red River? Yeah. It's interesting how there's like a self-sorting out in these kind of little classifications like that. Okay, yeah, he did it, but it was okay against another mortally flawed guy who that's his flaw is like he loses this kind of game to a guy like Lincoln Riley.
but see that's the thing, right? If that was Texas coached by Kirby Smart, by Ryan Day, that game's over, and we all know it's over.
Or even Mac Brown,
Yeah, no,
right?
exactly, right? Like we know that game is over, but it was against Steve
Yeah.
Sarkisian, and
Yep.
that's the thing.
That's a good way. Yeah. Even Marcus Freeman doesn't lose that game.
No.
Yeah. Interesting.
It's
Yeah.
the coaching, right? Because okay, yeah, at that point, because they had their other, it was Spencer Rattler was their starting quarterback, and then they pulled him and they threw in Caleb Williams, and they had no answer. And he was
Yeah.
pulled before the half. Like they had seen him a couple series and they had no answer to him whatsoever, and he tore them to shreds. And if that's Ryan Day, he's scrambling trying to figure out how to beat him. Same as Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart scheming up what something like something, anything, even just to throw him off a little bit. That's what the greats do. That's how they win these games. They do something to throw them off. But if Steve Sarkisian's like, all right, what we're currently doing isn't working, but we didn't game plan for him, so I'll just stick with the game plan. That's how you stay in your box. That's how you stay in your current box, and you don't move up a box.
Exactly. Well said. So, Robert, that was an excellent discussion. I really enjoyed that. This is a good way to kick off the season before we get in the conference previews with numbers. I think we had no numbers except for the Pete Carroll thing and people's records and stuff over the last 2 episodes. So good stuff. I enjoyed this. I hope you did too.
Yeah, it was great.
Okay. All right. Thank you for listening. If you're still with us, everybody, our next episode will be previewing Conference USA. We will see you then. Until then, stay well.
See you, everybody.